Hey there guys, it's still Turkey despite my unannounced nearly 2-year hiatus. I'll have a segment at the end of the video explaining where I've been for those who are interested, but for now, let's get into the video. Whenever a player, whether they be a killer player or a survivor player, talks about their biggest concern and problem with Dead by Daylight as far as balance is concerned, they are almost always going to say the same thing. Survivors have an issue with how free and tempting tunneling a survivor out of the game is without any meaningful skill required, and a killer will say that they have issues with how fast generators are popping from the simple, equally unskilled act of just splitting up on different generators. Everyone has different opinions on how this issue should be addressed. Should we just make gens take longer? Well, yeah, I guess we could, but that's pretty boring. Could we treat the first 10 seconds of endurance from getting off the hook like a Medal of Man stack, where it doesn't give you a deep wound but lets you tank the hit? I mean, maybe, but then survivors can use it offensively for free and don't even have to take the time to mend anymore. Revisiting Behavior's attempt at bandaging this in the past doesn't really seem very appealing, and someone is going to be unhappy regardless. But I think we should entirely scrap those ideas, leave them as they are, and start fresh, with implementing perks invented for the sole purpose of slowing the game down, and just make them BASEKIT. Behavior does this with killers all the time with overused add-ons, and they did this with borrowed time, so why don't we try that? Here's what I'm proposing. Obviously I'm not a game dev or a game designer, so my ideas are never going to be foolproof, but I'll give it a shot anyway. What is the best perk in the game for 1. Stopping a killer from tunneling, and 2. Slowing down the game? Not everybody will agree, but this is my take. For Survivor, it's undoubtedly Decisive Strike. DS changes the outcome of games where a killer is hard tunneling almost 100% of the time, especially in the hands of a good player. Some might say off the record, but while I definitely agree that it's almost just as good, when we're talking in terms of adding perks BASEKIT, I think it would be way too exploitable. And for killer, most people would argue corrupt intervention, but I actually disagree. I think it's Deadlock. Deadlock is amazing at getting survivors off gens they're working on and going to do something else so they don't just stand there and waste time, and the potential for them to get distracted and leave the gen open to any perk the killer might have, or a kick, is high. Corrupt is great in the early game, sure, but its job is done in the first 60 seconds and then it's gone. Deadlock is consistent throughout the entire game and is reasonably counterable, just like DS, where you can ignore the unhooked survivor and it does nothing, or slug them if they body block and keep chasing. Here's what I would like to see happen. I think that Decisive Strike should just straight up be BASEKIT. Take the old DS and do something else with it. Maybe extend the DS duration, but if that seems too good, just make it do something else completely. The only way to stop or discourage tunneling in Dead by Daylight is to punish it. Otherwise, it's just too free and too tempting. The devs completely entirely balance around that being a possibility, and in my opinion, I think it's bottlenecking the potential of this game. So while I do concede that tunneling is a core part of the game and has been for a long time, I don't think that it needs to continue to be, and if we remove that temptation, then we can start to add more interesting perks, interesting killers, interesting ideas that could fundamentally change and improve and freshen the gameplay so the game doesn't get stale. Now, to incentivize killers prioritizing chase over just getting somebody out, we need to give them a hand to make going for hooks over kills possible. I'm not so naive to think that some teams don't require tunneling to even stand a chance, I acknowledge that, so let's give the killer a bonus for their troubles. Deadlock at 35 seconds becomes BASEKIT. I think current Deadlock probably isn't good enough, not on its own, and I think it should be buffed up a little bit to account for it. In total, assuming survivors don't 99 a gen somewhere, which as a note I think they should still be able to do, that gives killers up to 3 extra minutes to take and commit to chases that might take a little bit longer, which gives more than enough time for killers to be able to move around and take good chases without as much risk. This incentivizes killers to go for chase more, de-incentivizes bringing full slowdown, and creates room for more fun creative builds and more survivor-killer interaction, the most fun part of the game. I think most people would agree. There is one exploitable thing I could see happening for killers, and it's the fact that S tiers aren't really going to care about DS as much as M1 killers, and a nurse, for example, can hard tunnel the baby default Michaela out easily and now gets a free slowdown for the rest of the game, making it almost impossible to win. For that, I think we should just make BASEKIT Deadlock disable when a survivor dies, like Ruin did. That way, if you really want to hard tunnel at 5 gens, you can still do it, you're just not going to be rewarded for it. Decisive for Survivor I think should work a little bit differently than how the perk does now. I want to scale the perk based on the amount of gens done to allow for the killer to play around it more and reduce the chances of survivors abusing it if they're already winning. The stun time of the perk activating will adjust depending on the generator count. At 5 gens it will be 7 seconds. Yes, I know that's a lot, but the main point of this perk is to de-incentivize hard tunneling at 5 gens, the first survivor that you see. Need I remind you, going for a different survivor will make this condition do absolutely nothing. At 4 gens, it will be 6 seconds, at 3 gens, 5 seconds, at 2 gens, 4 seconds, and at 1 gen, 3 seconds. And of course it would disable an endgame. This is a very strong effect and potentially exploitable in coordinated swifts, so let me give killers another compensation buff to account for this. I think that we should also just completely remove BASEKIT anti-camp. Survivors have a lot of options when it comes to saving their teammates, be it reassurance, double saving, deliverance, kinship, so I honestly don't think that the existence of BASEKIT BT and BASEKIT DS, I don't think it's really necessary anymore. And if you're worried about Bubba, just make his power not work around hook, boom, problem solved. I don't know why anybody didn't do this 8 years ago. So let me paraphrase all of the changes I'm proposing in an organized way. I want to, number 1, remove anti-camp. Number 2, add BASEKIT Decisive Strike with a stun timer that scales with the amount of generators completed. Number 3, add Deadlock BASEKIT at 35 seconds. And number 4, Deadlock disables if a survivor dies. Personally, I think these changes would be healthy for the game in the long run instead of constant safe band-aids that almost never work when hard tested. We should be bold and decisive with incentivizing an interesting and interactive playstyle and de-incentivizing a boring one. I'm open to discussing all of these ideas. Obviously, I'm no expert and my word isn't law. If you disagree about some of the values or directions, please do let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing and becoming a member to support the channel. And now I will go into why I have been gone for so long. So if you've made it this far, thank you for giving me your time. Now let me explain what happened. So some of y'all might have noticed that I haven't uploaded in almost 2 years as far as DBD content is concerned, and there's a reason for that. My home life, the inability to record in privacy without background noise, internet issues, real life issues, big events in my life. I won't go into the nitty gritty, but I'll give the cliff notes. When I was posting DBD content regularly, my channel was thriving. I was ecstatic. My videos were clearing 5,000 to 10,000 views consistently, and then, well, life happened. I got COVID, I lost my job, and as a result, I got evicted from my apartment. I was forced to move back home into a not so great environment, and a loud one at that. And then I moved in with my online friends after a while and finally had a place that I could make content again. But when I tried to come back, the views, the engagement, they just kind of weren't there anymore, and I lost my momentum. I was just gone too long. Burnout and demotivation, and that coupled with my constant struggle with ADHD and OCD just made me feel like I lost my edge. When I tried to record or stream, it just wasn't as good. I was never good enough, and eventually I just stopped. Not because I wanted to, but I kind of just let it get to my head, I guess. But since those times, I've refound my passion in art and animation. I met the love of my life, Cap Chains, my amazing and supportive husband who moved all the way from Germany to not only marry me, but live with me, which to this day I still can't believe. And we now have a beautiful, reasonably priced apartment in my hometown, which I love, and now I'm finally at a place of peace and stability where I feel this is something that I can try again. I just love it. I love making content. I love putting myself out there. I was born to do this, and I would love to show you all who I am if you'll have me. I'm ready, I'm coming back, and I hope you can all enjoy what I have to offer. Thank you so much, thank you for your patience, and I will see you all in the next one, and gobble, I guess.